Welcome to Run, Build, Grow, the podcast that laces up its running shoes and dives deep into the heartbeat of the communal spirit of running. I'm your host, Andrew Ware, and I'm thrilled to take you on this exhilarating journey where we explore stories that go beyond the pavement. We have another great episode in line for you this week. I am joined by Asti White, and his wife, Katie Wax White, was on an episode back in June. And like I mentioned with Katie, I've been friends with Katie forever. And Asti has quickly become a good friend as I've gotten to know him. And Asti is also a runner. And Asti went and ran the Detroit Free Press Marathon, which is on my bucket list of half marathons, as you will hear. But we talk about his journey in running, what it has looked like, and especially being a part of the Atlanta running community. And again, another big running community, but finding a place, finding a niche, finding a way to experience the communal spirit of running while also growing in his own right. And so this is an amazing conversation. So let's go ahead and jump in it and hear from Asti. All right, welcome in, everybody. This week I'm joined by Asti White, and many of y'all might be familiar. His wife is Katie. She was on the podcast not too long ago, but this time we get Asti having a little conversation about some marathoning. Asti, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, let's get started where we always start, and then we'll get into those marathon journeys. So what is your community, and what makes your community awesome?
Awesome. Yeah, my community here in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised, really I have a unique kind of community in the sense that I run with Atlanta Track Club. I also run with the Atlanta Running Club, so and various others. But, the community of running here in Atlanta is it's pretty powerful, and it's kind of unique how it's grown over the years, but we'll get into that. But yeah, that's my running community.
Yeah, so I think one of my first experiences with running in Atlanta Track Club, Atlanta Running Club, all of those great and wonderful folks, was when y'all hosted the Olympic marathon trials back in, what was that, 2020? Feels like ages ago now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and seeing kind of how that shows up. And so what's it been like, what's running been like in your journey? And then what role has growing up in Atlanta played in that journey as well?
Yeah, man, my running journey, let's start there. Really, since high school, I've been pretty plugged in with just being in athletics, training, played multiple sports, and I knew part of that was running. And so, the conditioning aspects. But then as I grew into, the love for the sport of running and what it brings, got to plug in around the city, actually. And it was unique because as I was in high school, I connected with some of the universities and had some connections in a way that, we would meet up in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. And if you're familiar with like the Pi Mile, 3.14, that there was areas where we would meet up and run and get to see the vibrant aspects of the city. So through high school, I didn't necessarily run cross country or track, but I did play, football, lacrosse, and did other sports, but I was always kind of growing alongside those teams. I would go to the track events. I would run with the track team. I would run with the long distance runners and cross country. And then little by little, I just kind of took that and I was like, what are other avenues in which I could run and grow? And so my family, fortunately, we actually were Atlanta Track Club members early on. So we got all the swag. We got into like the different, events, obviously the Peachtree Road Race and things like that, and grew up running those events. And it was just unique to see how that has grown, it being the largest 10K, we had over 60,000 people last year and continues to grow. And this year they actually actually this year going into 2025 January, we have the opposite polar opposite run in January, which is running the Peachtree backwards. So I don't know if you've heard about that, but that's, up and coming. But that's a little bit of, growing up, running, what it means to me, and then also, how it's, Atlanta Tri Club has been pretty phenomenal for my family.
And I think one of the big things that you see is growing up in such a big city, it can often be difficult to find that community, like to just find the place that you feel like you fit in. And I think especially so when you look at cities that are so evolved around the running scene, like Atlanta has been for a while. I kind of often compare it to some of those cities that have those major marathons, or New York's, Chicago's, Boston's, that are built around these big marathons. Atlanta's not built around a big marathon. I mean, it's built around Peachtree, and they take pride in that, which I love. And so what was it like for you to kind of find your space in a lot of that? Because I think, like we've explored with some other guests, when you come into that space, it can almost be overwhelming to find, okay, where does Asti fit in? Like, where do I fit in at my pace, at my abilities? And not that we want to judge by any of those things, but to the place where we're comfortable and what we can do and what we can learn and grow in.
Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Because like you said, major cities, they do kind of have the marathon as what they champion. And thankfully, just growing up and, finding my space in the running community, I'm thankful that, the bar was more of a 10K, and not necessarily like the one and only Atlanta Track Club and the Peachtree, but just knowing that a lot of the city, we have 5Ks, we have 8Ks, we have 10Ks, we have smaller races. And part of that, I remember my first 5K, it was so nerve-wracking. I ran it with my dad, and it was in Brookhaven, not far from where I'm at now, about 20 minutes or so. But Brookhaven, they had a 5K. It was a charity 5K, and showing up early morning, as typically a lot of runs happen early morning. But I could remember just kind of my gut feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. I don't even know what I should be expecting. I've trained, I've ran a lot, but just knowing that, like, okay, we have thousands of people out here. What is this going to look like? What kind of neighborhoods are we running through? And I think just that exhilarating, fun, vibrant, experience, what we typically, experience in a race, was just so rewarding, but also building into that, knowing that, like, I may not know everyone on the run, but as the longer I go in this journey, what other races, runs, and opportunities are there? And so I'm thankful for Atlanta Tri Club once again, because from early on, we got the young folks, really the whole spectrum of age, right, and abilities. And so with track runs, long distance runs, just different, exercise and engagement opportunities throughout the city, I've been able to plug into. And I think, regardless of where you start, that was specific to Atlanta, but I remember when I was in LaGrange College, LaGrange, Georgia, small private liberal arts D3 school. I one year was like, I'm stopped. I've completed kind of my journey with football and lacrosse and things of that nature. And I was like, I still love the community aspect. I love this camaraderie, the team environment. And so I decided in my sophomore year of college to run with the cross country team. I was like, freshman year, I wanted to focus on academics. But then I was like, no, I miss this. I miss this so much. And so I picked up running again. And then at the local church level, I hosted and did this kind of couch to 5K, and I was like, how can I take this love and passion for the sport and kind of share it amongst the community, not just for the church folk, but the community at large. And I will say, that the turnout wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the Atlanta Track Club turnout, but, we started somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it really matters, and what counts is, like, for whoever it is, whatever ability that you have, we can all come together and share in this effort of being our best selves, being the best, showing up, and really pouring out as much as we can. and walking, running, volunteering, giving, all of those aspects to a run or a race is what really drives me and motivates me to be in this type of sport.
Yeah. And so, fast forwarding to where you are now, and, for those of you who are listening, I'd encourage to go back and listen to Katie's podcast where she talks about her own journey and what that's been like. But fast forwarding to today, you make this decision, excuse me, you make this decision yourself to kind of go after, something major, something big, and you really commit yourself and throw yourself into wanting to run a marathon, right? And I know for a lot of runners, that is, really is something big. What is it, like less than 1% of the human population has ever completed a marathon, and you wanted to count yourself in that body. So what was the decision like for you wanting to run a marathon? How did that process in your head?
Yeah, running a marathon or wanting and that desire to run a marathon, certainly it grew over years. And if you will, I spent some time kind of serving in Michigan and Kalamazoo, Michigan, and in that time being in community with folks and running and kind of doing my personal runs, I learned about the Detroit Free Press Marathon. And not necessarily back then or even before then did I think about running a marathon, but what really compelled me or drew me into running a marathon was the sights, the sounds, the people, the community. And I was like, if I'm going to run 26.2 miles, I want it to be something that I can see the community coming together. I can see different parts of life and culture and things of that nature. And I thought it would be unique to run in 2 different countries, right? So the Detroit Free Press Marathon offers running over a bridge and under a tunnel, but you're running in 2 countries. You're running from US to Canada and Canada back. And so to have that experience and to see it, I thought it was, something to really go after and look at, and try. So back in 2018 to current day, I knew that I wanted to do that. I didn't know when. And so my goal was, maybe perhaps before I turn 30, let me run a marathon. So I remember at the turn of 2023, 2024, when registration opened, signing up for the marathon and having the support of my wife and family, made that decision. And I knew that, with ample amount of time to train and go after it, I knew that I could do it with the support and loved ones, supporting me. And so I had my eye on it for years. And now, after completing it for this 2024 year, I am so thankful to yes, like you said, 1% of people are marathoners or run marathons. But to get into this sport and to understand, like, it's so much more than just running. I know you have your elites. I know you have kind of these different classifications of folks trying to do the Abbott World, and I just saw that they included a 7th, Australia, Sydney, Australia. So, trying to, run all 6 major marathons and now 7. But, really for me, it's more about the sights, the sounds, the community, the culture, letting your feet hit the ground and really taking in the full experience of what that is. So being in Michigan, loving, the various cities, Detroit, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, being in that for 2 to 3 years, I wanted to go back and really experience the Detroit Free Press Marathon and see what is this all about. And I'm thankful for it. So here we are.
So definitely the half marathon in that race is on my bucket list. I love the idea of running over the Ambassador Bridge, coming back through the tunnel. And so, folks, whether plug in for an awesome half marathon experience, doing the Free Press half marathon weekend. But when you look at it, it's not often that you see people choosing races based on a lot of those qualifications that you just gave, right? You wanted one that had just a great spirit, a great environment, and not throwing shade at a lot of the world marathon majors, but not getting sucked into just like that mentality, right? Like, can watch New York, I can watch Boston, I can watch Chicago, London, Tokyo. I'm sure I'll watch many more Sydneys in years to come. And you see the crowds lining up and all of that stuff. But, the fact that you went and you looked at it and, you thought this between the sights and sounds, between the communities, to see that in folks who are going after these really big goals. What were some of the ways that you saw throughout the training that the community that you had in Atlanta, the Atlanta Track Club, Atlanta Running Club, those groups that you went and joined, those times you went on group runs, what was the motivation and the sense of camaraderie that you got in those spaces as you were preparing for this race?
Yeah, I'll be honest, early on in the training journey for me, it was more selfish, it was more in the sense of like, I signed up for this race. Let me see if I can, go to the gym, go, do my strength, like do the variations of training that I can. And then more and more as the community, really grew in a sense of like more events, right? Weekly runs and things like that. As I plugged in more, what I came to find is that in this sense of camaraderie, in the sense of like showing up, right? Having those conversations before, sometimes during the run. I'm not the runner that like I love to talk and run. That's not me. But before, during, and after those runs, it was in the sense of like how can we show up, be our best selves? And I think for myself, knowing that I came from a selfish place of like, yes, I signed up for a marathon, I'm training, but then more as I learned more about other stories and shared my own story, it is this unified thread of we are human. We're trying to do our best day to day in our work life and our jobs and our communities, and just the opportunities to stretch, to grow. It really invigorated me to do more, right? Like to explore perhaps more than just the marathon that I'm training for, but also ways that other people are running other races here locally and elsewhere, right? And why are they running the race, right? So, in those conversations, it's like, yes, you're running, you're training, but why are you running that race, right? My why was, I once lived in Michigan. I wanted to see the sites, that community and be a part of it. But more than that, there are other races that have wonderful causes and ways to give back. And I haven't talked much about this, but one in particular this year that I loved was the Move for Grady. So I work at Grady Hospital. It's one of our trauma one centers, the one and only here in the city of Atlanta right now. And that was a wonderful experience to both raise money, build a team of folks, and to go out there and it's Move for Grady. It's you have biking, you have running, you have various types of races for this one day event, and then you get to come out and have all of the sponsorships. And it was like before the race, there was so much to do. During the race and then after the race, there was food and festivities, and we were right there at the old Ted Turner Stadium. It's now Georgia State. And so, yeah, it was just a wonderful, like I said, way to give back and plug in. And I think that's what we get to find in the running community, right? Is that you have a personal drive for maybe one particular race or multiple races, but then you go out there and you get to have conversations with folks and you learn so much more, like expanding your horizons and learning more about how you can plug in and serve, and maybe go cheer on some friends and loved ones that are running other races. And I think that's just phenomenal. Both in and what I love about it, it's like the both and, right? It's the actual event of running, but then also I love to get behind, those who are giving back to the community, right? But both financially and all the means, right? I just think that's wonderful ways to really plug in and both receive the support that you need and offer that support to others.
And how much do those experiences play into, I like to call it miles 18 to 24 of the marathon? And I think you know what I mean, right, by that. And I think a lot of folks who have listened to the podcast, maybe they'll remember, conversations with like Paisley and, Ashley, about just the struggles of what it's like, in those distances that your body doesn't necessarily know 100%. In a training cycle, you might do an 18, you might do a 20, you might do a 22, but you don't do 24, you don't do 26. But to me, thinking about what that looks like, how much do those stories, those opportunities, those encouragements that you take, because while it's not like a tangible, like you don't like reach out and grab that kind of community, right? It's not a group run. It's not a 2-hour conversation while you're doing 15 miles. Maybe it's it's you participating in a race and then maybe being able to witness or recognize or understand the person that's helped by that. What is that recollection when you're going through a marathon, all of those miles that you put in, but even more so, all of those events, all of those opportunities, all of those connections that you make along the way in that respect, not necessarily in the respect of always join in for a group run.
Yeah. Man, let's go back to that 18 to 24 miles. When you said that, I got the goosebumps. There is that long stretch of road that's ahead. And not to say that you're in ghost town. I mean, some runs or races are different from others. But my one, this experience of the marathon, there's something to say that, along the journey of training, the stories, the things that you carry, I'm a firm believer that, throughout our lives, the things that we experience, the things that we say and do, that it sticks with us. It's with our body that, and I'll give props to the book of The Body Keeps the Score. That has been a phenomenal book for me but I won't get into all the roots of that. But ultimately, as we run and in this journey of like long miles, long days, those, final miles, if you will, and even thinking about the start and the middle and closing that race, there's so much, like you said, it's not necessarily people holding your hand or having long durations of conversation, but there's something to say that in those final marks of a marathon, if you will, let's say, like you said, 18 to 24 miles, you're getting up to closer to 26.2. And it's like your body, everything, there are moments where you question, right? You're like, am I going to be able to make this? And I think those voices along the way, in those training miles, in those community runs, in the ways that you showed up and were able to participate, either cheering on folks or giving or handing out water or hydrations, any of those aspects, right? Getting plugged into the community in various ways. I think that's what really builds, what drives, and what engages us even further to know that, like, yes, you have a personal journey. You have this moment where you are training, perhaps in spaces where you feel alone, but just knowing that, like, you also are, being cheered on and supported and loved by others. Maybe you're going uphill. I remember, we have a hilly Atlanta. We live in the forest and training here has been helpful for a lot of races for me. But what I have come to find out is that I'm tired of races here in Atlanta, because like you either start on a hill, finish on a hill. There's hills all around, and I'm like, they even have a running group and kind of an exercise group called Hills for Atlanta. And I don't want to get on that tangent, but ultimately knowing that on this journey, you have points along the destination, along the journey, that you will be in like question of, am I going to make it? Be in question of where are the people? But knowing that whether it's a long stretch that, there may not be anybody there, knowing that the voices of support, the people who have been uplifting you from mile one and all the way to where you're at, knowing that you have a community of folks that are there, that's what really, got me through. I know my experience in that marathon, I was thoroughly surprised. I thought I was going to be in no man's land, but actually every way from 18 and a half all the way up to 26.2, they had more neighborhood people out in the streets cheering on. We had hydration stations, goose stations, and looking at, I'm not the one to like typically on a race day or before a run, a race, I don't typically look at I don't like to map it out and be like, okay, where are the hills? What's the, I don't, but for a marathon, I think that's important. And I thought I did to a degree look at those things. And I was like, I questioned some of those later miles, but being out there, I mean, putting one step in front of the other and having those voices of support in my training with me, backing me, pushing me, feeling as if they were the wind pushing me forward. I just, there is aspects of this that, like you said, there's no tangible aspects typically. I mean, there are people handing stuff out at times, but not all the time. And so I think, knowing that you plug in with a community of people from the very beginning and all the way throughout and ongoing. This is ongoing. Like I don't plan on stopping my training, running. I've even looked at other races to run. So who knows? We'll see. But just know that you're not alone, and it is for everyone to be involved.
Well, and here at Run Build Grow, we often talk about not just what you receive from running in community, and we've talked about it not just even today, but just throughout the podcast. There's a lot of what we receive when we run in community. There is that sense in which we gain strength, we grow faster. All of those awesome things. We can do things we never thought possible, like run a marathon or, hit those PRs that we need. And yet that receiving in community does not also come without giving. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't think we can be completely and totally folks who take from community without offering something in return. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what that often looks like when we think about it in those terms. You talk about running the marathon, but also in the same breath, you talk about everything that you have taken as you've been on this process. I think about the folks who do, the donation campaigns for races, for all the causes. I mean, most every marathon has some sort of donation or foundation system. But even within the local community of this is what I'm doing, but recognizing that in not doing it alone, you have something to offer back to the community. And so what are some of those ways, some of those additional ways? You've talked about a few, right? You've talked about making sure that when you're registering for races, you're like, hey, what am I registering for? What am I doing here? Even in doing group runs, there's an intentionality. But what are some of the other ways that you found yourself able individually as Asti White to give back to this community that, I mean, we started all the way back with Kid Asti and growing up in Atlanta and doing these races all the way up to now where you've grown, matured, become almost a new person in Atlanta who now can experience it from a different perspective. What are you offering back to this thing that nurtured you, that cultured you, that brought you all of these amazing things?
Yeah, thank you. I'll first start by saying running is an interesting web of grace and in a way that blesses us and it encourages us to continue engaging and experiencing this grace. And part of, as I, have both been able to experience the grace, now to share that grace or that this wonderful experience, I've thought kind of ahead, and I was able to look at some of the races here in my own neighborhood, not just city, but in my neighborhood. And I'm thankful there are some upcoming races that are going to pass right down my road. And I think me as Asti, it's just so unique. I was thinking about on a lot of runs, people handing out orange slices and all sorts of things, right? Bananas and potato, like you go down the gamut of things. And I think regardless of the race, me as Asti, I'm just thankful now to know that there are races upcoming that they will be passing my home and to give back, and part of having fun. I love the encouragement of music and DJs and all of that stuff along the run. So I've thought about how can I also both hand out a nutritional snack and some music and some encouragement along the way to pump them up, regardless of whatever mile they're on. I just to be a bright smile, to be out there cheering them on, kind of pouring into them. That is what I'm gonna do and encourage my neighbors as well, knowing that these runners are coming right up Edgewood. We live on the edge, is what we call it. So, so living on that edge, living on the edge and being part of this neighborhood and this community, that is one way. Additionally to what I plan on doing in this coming year is, continuing to celebrate the ways that we are coming together as community. And I want to really, I don't know, like broaden my horizon in the sense of like, what more than just running clubs, more than just races and runs, what other things, what other unique ways is the running community, like bridging community? Like in what ways is the running community specifically coming together and alongside other people of whatever they're doing, and I want to see what that is. And I haven't really tapped into that yet, but certainly want to explore those opportunities. And even beyond Atlanta, I told myself and my wife, I was like, I want to continue in the sense of, going to different cities, going to different places. And it doesn't have to be a marathon. It doesn't have to be a half marathon. It doesn't have to be a race per se. It could be anything of just joining together in conversation like we are now, or serving and giving back. So there's ways that I'm, perhaps a virtual run and things like that. There's opportunities to plug in that way, and I've done that too. So, but yeah, celebrating the vitality, the health, the well-being of who we are individually and communally that is a big piece of who I am, and that's what I certainly want to continue engaging and promoting. So.
I know a lot of times when, my family and I will go on vacation, I'll often try and see if there are any running clubs that meet up in the area, just to hang out. I think that communal basis of even just having fellowship together. And, really early on in my time when I was doing stuff with J&A up here in Hampton Roads of, imagine if we treated that starting line like its own little community. Yes. And I always just chuckle because I'm one of those guys that, when I'm in my starting corral, like I'm making friends. I'm making friends. Like we're talking, we're having fun. We are not focused on how much pain we are about to be in, but we are relaxing, we're chilling. But I love that extension of not only are we fellowshipping, but even like what can we do? And it almost has my mind processing of, what is our individual impact when it all comes to this? Because I think the quick answer for a lot of runners always seems like, well, I can coach. And I've definitely gotten into that mode. But then also it's like, all right, well, yeah, but, we're so intricately woven into our communities because to me, it's really easy to look at a community and think, especially when you look at cities like Atlanta, like, I mean, not cities, but Hampton Roads as like a major metropolitan area. I also lived in DC for a number of years while I was in grad school. And, you can get so lost in the, commuting, being in a car, getting from one place to another. But in very little fellowship opportunities, are you like traversing the streets of where you live? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not going like insanely far for runs, right? I'm running in my community. And I say that even saying like, I mean, yeah, I go and I run in Virginia Beach sometimes, but for the most part, my regular running happens in like this little Suffolk, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Norfolk, like area that I reside in. And I'm sure you do the same. And I love where you said it's this web of grace to engage and experience. And so, as you're thinking about that, maybe the question that I want to leave listeners on is, what impact do you think that the running community can have when it engages more deeply in the local community? Because you talk about communities that you've been a part of, right? What drew you to the Free Press Marathon? You were working in Kalamazoo, right? You were working in not like directly in that area, right? But I mean, you were working in Michigan and you found this connection to this race. What drew you into Atlanta has been this love of the city that you've grown up in, the city that you've lived in. You talk about, the Miles for Grady. Was that it?
The Move for Grady.
Move for Grady. and you talk about the connection it has with like where you work.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not just for listeners to think, but I'd even love your thoughts on, what kind of impact do you think that the running community could have if it really takes seriously that idea that they're probably some of the best situated to really take in the best, but also like not in a negative way, the most need that's happening in their community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have so many thoughts to this because I think the running community, one, plugging into your own personal local community, running is necessary. But because, and in part of, as you were bringing this up, I thought about one of my unique runs as I served in El Salvador for 1 month. That whole month, every week they had a weekly run, and I was a part of those weekly runs, and I got to see, once again, vibrant community coming together, understanding leaders in the running community, and leaders around the community that joined in that. Whether they were there every week or once every so often or what have you. And there is so much. It's not just what the running community could do. I think the running community is already doing this work, and I wonder, if we plugged in a little bit more, even perhaps you're not a runner, or you don't, and maybe perhaps you don't enjoy running right now, but just plugging in, maybe showing up at the start of the run, the end of the run. I know some folks with the Atlanta Track Club, they will receive the bags and they will sit there, they'll cheer on, they'll provide, a check-in system and then a checkout system. And I think those ways of just like engaging and supporting those who are going to go on a run, that's huge as well. So I think regardless of who you are, where you come from, the type of, if you're, running or not, those ways that we're engaging with the running community, there's just so much. It's so robust, right? Like what they're doing already. And I want to kind of press on that because it's not what we could do. I think there's more that we could do, yes, but I think what we're doing already with the running communities around the world is that it's this interesting, vibrant thread of connection, and this I mean, like, it's just a unique fabric of folks coming together to have simple everyday conversations, connecting about work, life, and everything in between. And I just, that's why I'm like, this is such a graceful act and a way of being in life. Sometimes you may be sharing, run, and it may be a day of where you need prayer or reflection or just simply just pouring out something or receiving something from a loved one. And it just, so there's so many aspects to this community that I would encourage us, and now sharing this and thinking about it, I'm like, for whoever is listening, perhaps where we live, let's get deeper and more invested. And then where we go and travel and visit other places, let's seek out, like Andrew said, who is, running, where's the running clubs, where are the leaders? Because I feel like there are so many people that enjoy this sport and enjoy this way that they can connect. And that's everyone from, folks in ministry to politicians to doctors, nurses, everyone, really, bankers. So it is truly a community that is, like I said, vibrant, and folks that come together from all walks of life. And that's what I love about this. And I would encourage us to continue to push and to pour in, and to really live in this community of how can we connect, engage, and continue to grow in this way, both for our health and our well-being throughout our life.
Well, I think that's just it, right? And we talk about those who, come in and see what our community is about. We talk about those, no matter what pace, no matter what, speed, no matter what level or ability, and continuing to stand behind all walkers or runners. Just because you continue to have both feet in contact with the ground. I'm not the International Olympic speed walking committee. You can you can keep both feet on the ground. You still run. No. But it's that encouragement, right? And I think that's the cool part about this community is when I see it at its, and it's like a reflection of everything else. When it's at its best, right? It has this reflection and this spirit that, anybody can do anything. And to be a part of it is it's the joy of the journey. And what that means for going along and being a part of that is, I may come in here and run a 7-minute mile, and I'm there supporting those who may move better at more of a walking pace. And especially as I'm finding out in this season, in this cycle of injury again, is, hey, just because I'm walking, just because I'm injured, just because I can't run like I used to run, nobody's judging me differently. There's a lot of razzing going on only because I am like constantly injured, but there's like, in a way, it's almost a level of acceptance, right? And it's a level of familiarity and family. I think when we come into community, there is that sort of falling of the veil that takes place. And that allows us to be who we can be. And I wonder, as we continue to build this sense of community, as we continue to build it up and see what it means, that we continue to highlight that as part of who we are together. And whether it's being up front, you're running and then you get done. And one of the things that I love is if I get done with my race, then that gives me more time to cheer on other folks. Because in a lot of ways, it's what I love doing. Like, even when I'm running, I'm trying to cheer on folks. Unless I'm in like the last 100 meters and I'm absolutely about to die. But I'm sure you do too, but you find yourself on that course and you see somebody who's just struggling and you're like, all right, come on. Let's get to it. Let's get on it and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the ways that the run community builds within itself and makes itself better when we highlight those experiences.
Yes, it certainly does. It absolutely does. And what a wonderful celebration it is. All in all, to capture those moments, to be a part of those moments, experience the, and I say experience, but it's this both experiencing and sharing. And I, like you said, cheering on folks during the race and after the race. I'll be honest with you. I after that marathon, I was in so much pain that all I could think of was, let's get to the car.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand that one.
But to know that, I had my wife out there cheering me on. And then along the race, I looked up to other runners along the way and I was like, come on, we've got this. I remember specifically at the half marathon and marathon split, it's night and day. You got a lot of people up there and it's, so folks that are running for the half and then folks who are running the marathon. And we had those moments and to cheer one another on. That is the biggest thing that I think we should continue to celebrate and to drive home, is that we are in this together. We're pouring in together, regardless of who you are, where you're coming from, ability, walk, jog, run, sometimes crawl, right? That is, I think, so important to highlight and to capitalize on.
Yeah. And just bringing that communal spirit into it as well. Well, Asti, let's hit these end of podcast questions as we wrap up our time today. What is your favorite distance to run?
My favorite distance to run would be a 10-miler. And there's been so much fun. There's not many out there like races or what have you, but 10 miles is always fun to run.
I really need to get in on that race. The best thing is that when I finally run a 10-miler, because I'm on record that I just want to get in super great, I want to get into my peak half marathon shape and just take on a 10-miler. And so I know that no matter what happens, that the first time I run a 10-miler, not only will it be a PR, but it'll probably be a PR that I will never get close to ever again because I've hyped it up so much about this one time. I'm going to run Cherry Blossom or something. And I'm going to absolutely destroy myself. So what is your favorite thing to eat post-run? Food, snack, meal, you get home, probably a long run because that's when we're hungriest. What are you grabbing to eat? What are you grabbing to drink?
Wow. I love food of all sorts. I grew up with a chef, so there's not one thing in particular, but it would have to involve peanut butter. For me, I love, whether it was I mean, a shake with peanut butter. It could be apples with peanut butter. It could be bananas. I mean, it doesn't matter. But I think peanut butter, there's just something like and it's not necessarily substance, but the way that it coats and it's kind of soothing to my body. So that's one in particular that I have to like. I love. And then food wise, I mean, I just like to throw down. Yeah, like it could be anything. It could be, protein obviously, and but post, there's not one in particular. I'm sorry, I can't help you there. Yeah, I love food.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I will say, friends, I have never been in a room with Asti, and whatever food we are eating has not been deliciously amazing. And lastly, Asti, could you give our listeners a reason to join their local run club or group?
Yes. Oh man, you should definitely join your local running clubs or groups or whatever is there, or maybe perhaps it's not there. Start it, because it is so important. As we've said throughout this podcast, it's ways to pour in, pour back, but then also connecting that thread of community. It could start as something small. If you don't have anything, invite some folks, Facebook, Instagram, social media, or even knocking on doors. Hey, are you interested in going on a run with me this night? There's opportunities, and they're endless. And so I think the reason to do that is because you get to gain so much more than just you running alone, or being alone, right? You get to share in life the experiences of the right here, right now, real time. Yes, one foot after the other, hitting the pavement, but then more than that, the stories that we have shared and continue to share, they really connect us. So please get out there, go connect with your communities, and run, walk, jog, volunteer, whatever it is. Just know that it is so important, and it is more than just you, and you will learn so much more from those conversations, from those connections, and the ways that y'all are pouring in together.
What an amazing insight. What an awesome conversation. Thank you so much, Asti.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to the podcast. I've certainly appreciated it.
Oh my goodness, what another awesome episode. I mean, I know I say this all the time, but it is just so hard. I am enjoying this so much, bringing these amazing conversations to you all. And I hope that in this episode, as we explored that journey, as we saw what Asti was doing from the time he was a kid growing up in Atlanta and in the Atlanta running community to where he is now, and what that space has looked like for him. He talks about this web of grace that we are all in, that we are blessed to engage and experience. And he's really taking that mindset, that ideology in as he is going and he is experiencing this run community, as he is participating in this run community, as he is learning and growing in this running community. And we see that it is not just about the big races. You can get lost in Atlanta with Atlanta Track Club and all of these different things and the big races they have around there. But we hear from Asti the focus on wanting to be connected with those who are in need, wanting to be connected with those who he can help through his running journey. And so making those connections, not just in his running community, but beyond his running community. And just hearing of the dedication and effort that he put into this marathon so that he could experience what Detroit was like and what it felt like to him. And so another great episode. I feel so thankful to have all these amazing guests that we have had so far. And you, hopefully, maybe if you are listening to this and you're like, man, I have a great story, or even if you think like, man, I have a subpar story, friends, let me tell you, it doesn't matter what your story is. If your story is one of running, if your story is one of connecting with community, email me, andrew@runninrev.com. I'm always looking for amazing guests to come on. I will help you get comfortable in this podcasting space. It might be your first episode recording, being a guest ever, but friends, I just want to share these stories of everyday runners, just those of us who are grinding it out, and yet we're doing it with amazing support systems around us. So reach out to me and just make sure that you are supporting this podcast. I love putting all of this effort into it because I know that these stories are worth sharing. And so I just ask for your support in return. Make sure you're following or subscribing to the podcast. If you can, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or leave a comment on the episodes in Spotify. One of those two ways help folks see how much you are enjoying these episodes. And if you could, I know, always asking, and it feels like just that pitch for money, but it kind of is, because to show your support, to help me continue to put this on, help me keep these lights on, head on over, leave a tip, become a recurring donor to the Run, Build, Grow podcast, to the RunninRev Network and Run Club. buymeacoffee.com/RunninRev. I would love to have your support, have you support this podcast, keep the lights on, and keep these stories coming. You keep bringing me the stories, and I'll keep recording them. And so I invite you to go and support and help keep this podcast going. As we all go and get our runs in, get our walks in, get our miles in, remember, make every mile count.